For the better part of a decade, Nike had a really great run with its irons. Even though they're not around anymore, they honestly changed how a lot of irons were made at the time and still have one of the biggest cult followings around. So recently I was doing some spring cleaning and I was getting rid of some of the old golf clubs that I don't use anymore, that I've replaced, and I came to these right here, which is the Nike Nexcor VS irons. You probably recognize these. Most guys who played golf from anywhere between 2005 and 2015 definitely will recognize this or a variation of it. Now this actually was my mom's boyfriend's that I'm actually selling. I actually had the Slingshot blue model from 2011, which was the first nice iron set I ever bought myself. And frankly, I was really glad I did. So recently, when I was going to sell these, I of course put them on eBay and let it go wild, and I couldn't believe at how much attention it garnered. There were hundreds of views, and there was actually almost 50 to 60 watchers on the item, which for an iron that's essentially almost 10 years old, it was pretty crazy. I actually ended up selling them for way more than I thought I would. Nothing too crazy, but honestly, I thought an iron set like this, I only sold my blue ones a while back for $80 for the whole set, which now I feel ripped off of, but I got well over double that for these. But it made me kind of start thinking about why they have such a cult following now and what made them so great in the first place. Now, by the time these types of irons came around, it was about 2006. That's when they introduced this type of iron. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by this type of iron in a second. But essentially it lasted about 9 years total, and it really changed how the iron market went and how irons were created. And honestly, when the first model came out, a lot of people laughed at Nike. Mainly because if you look at this, and you'll recognize this pretty easy now, but it was really big and heavy and thick. I mean, a lot of people at the time did not like this look. A lot of critics really questioned the design by Nike because of how heavy it was at the bottom and how big and chunky it was and how it looked from the top. And as you can tell from looking there, it just looks big at a dress, which actually anymore it might not look that big to you guys because it's pretty common to see clubs made that way now, but it wasn't at the time. At the time, it was extremely weird, and a lot of people thought that Nike was really digging themselves a hole. But in reality, they were actually changing the game, and they were doing it in the way that Nike doesn't usually go about it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this golf club and just kind of see what the whole thing has. So this is the 6 iron from this series. Let's look at the top first, okay? Now, this is actually a pretty interesting design. Nike had a really, simplistic design, but always flashed a little bit of color in there. They were known for having the green. They were known for having bright yellow. I mean, they were known for doing things a little bit wilder. They were trying to get essentially to the young crowd, which is like what Vice Golf is doing nowadays. But Nike was really one of the first to be like, hey, loud, bright, vibrant. Rory McIlroy played with them. Tiger played with them. Having, the Tiger Red on some of the clubs, like really trying to incorporate that in there to get a new audience. And it kind of worked. I just don't think people were really ready for it. A lot of people didn't like the loud green, and there's still a lot of golfers today that are very conservative about their coloring. They want black, they want gray. Me, I have a yellow driver, the yellow and black Cobra, and I love it. I'm thinking about painting the shaft yellow, so I'm wild. I've always been there. But Nike was never afraid of that aspect of it. And I think they knew they had to go that route because, frankly, they knew the top of their club would turn off a lot of people. It was big, it was chunky, people didn't like it, but what they promised is it's easy to hit. Anyone can pick up the club and essentially get a lot more consistent iron strikes, which was the case. These clubs were highly raved from critics and users alike because they were just so easy to hit. You throw a ball down, you swing, and for the most part, as long as you're anywhere in this face, it goes about the same distance, which was nice. Even I remember hitting off the toe with my blue set, I'd only lose about 5 or 10 yards, which was incredible forgiveness that at the time was just kind of unheard of. Looking at the top here, this grip is garbage. That's really the only way I can say it. I mean, this is the most basic grip you can find, which made sense because these clubs a lot of the time retailed for $300 to $500 for the whole iron set. I know I actually bought my blue set brand new for $300 from a sporting goods store right off the rack. It wasn't even, it might have even been on sale for 50 bucks. I think $350 was the normal MSRP, which is about as cheap as an iron set will get. So you don't expect them to have great grips or anything like that. It's definitely something that you would want to regrip. But frankly, I bought a $1,400 set of irons, the King Forge Techs I use now, and I regripped those as well. So I think any iron set you're going to want to get gripped. So it was actually a smart move by Nike making just a generic whatever grip because they knew you were going to regrip it anyway. So it actually saved cost. Now this shaft, you'll notice, this is something that Nike kind of did exclusively for a while. They called it the Uniflex shaft, and I mean, as you can see there, it's definitely all Nike'd up. How these actually were, I'm not sure. They had kind of mixed reviews, but honestly, I don't think most people cared. They came in your stiff, they came in your regular, and really, I don't think too many people paid attention to that, especially the market for this golf club being a beginner. Honestly, I don't think they cared one way or the other. Now, keep in mind, these are in a little bit, used condition, but honestly, remember, they're almost 10 years old, so they've lasted a long while, and I think it's pretty obvious why they still have a cult following. One, Nike doesn't make golf clubs anymore, so if you want a Nike golf club, you can't buy one, you can't find one. So you've got to get a set on eBay, which means that anyone who wants one, Nike has a ton of followers. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. It's probably the biggest clothing brand in the world. So it makes sense that there's a lot of big fans out there that still want the golf clubs, and that's probably how the only way you can get them. If they have a set that goes out or they need a club replacing, eBay's probably the only way. You're not going to find them in too many locations. But overall, I think one of the reasons that people love them the most is because of all that forgiveness it has packed in it. It's really crazy how easy these are to hit, and it's really crazy that even on off-center hits on below or above or to the side, wherever, you just don't lose much distance. And I think that people really loved that aspect about them because frankly, at the time, like I said, that type of forgiveness was unheard of. Nowadays, it's common. I mean, every single club is this big, every single club is this chunky. That's in the forgiving market, of course, not your blades, but your super game improvement irons or your game improvement irons all look like this. They're all really thick, and in fact, a lot of people have even gravitated toward that look that they like the best. So times have definitely changed, but all in all, that is just so easy to hit. I mean, it just glides through the ball. It's really fantastic. It doesn't surprise me that there's still a following for this, but I was surprised at how much there was a following. Considering Nike hasn't made golf clubs in almost 6 years now, it was really surprising to see so many people interested in these old clubs. Nike really changed the game with these clubs, and if you heard me earlier, I said that they changed it in a way that, frankly, they're not used to doing. And here's why when you think about it. Nike's one of the more premier brands. Usually when you think of Nike, you think of more expensive. They sell t-shirts for $40, $50. They sell shoes for $150. They sell limited shoes for $300. They're known as being one of the top premier brands worn by athletes and rich people, and I mean, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, especially when you think about Nike's roots. But the golf clubs that were really popular with Nike were the complete opposite of that. Nike came in and sold a product that was honestly veered as ugly, veered as not in style, and was actually able, I mean, honestly, a lot of people thought were ugly, but was able to completely change the market. I mean, a good iron set for $300 that lets you just put a ball down and hit it effortlessly really gave a lot of competition to other big name brands and changed how they went about making their golf balls. And that's not something Nike's usually known for, coming out with the cheapest option and the ugliest option, but still making it easier for consumers. Usually it's the opposite. Usually it's the most expensive and it's the nicest and it's the best quality, or premier. They usually go to extensive lengths to make sure of that. So it was interesting, and maybe that's ultimately why Nike decided to get out of the golf industry, is because they ended up being more of a budget brand possibly, and pros couldn't hit their high-end stuff, so maybe that had a lot to do with it. But all in all, Nike made a great product, and there's still a lot of love out there for them, and I'll always remember them as the first set I ever bought that I really did well with and really helped me get into the love of golf. Guys, thanks for watching. Keep watching to keep saving and keep learning.